I think we're going to go ahead with the presentation with just us. Is that okay? I think that's the best that we're going to do. Whoop. All right. I'm going to go ahead and start based on Marty's message. When I present, I can't see all of you, so send a message and it will pop up on my screen if something changes. I think I already started a little bit on this, talking about the Master Gardener program that was started in Washington State. In North Carolina, we started in 1979, and this is an internationally acclaimed program. Our volunteers guide homeowners making environmentally sound decisions. We're trained by NC State University faculty and staff to provide research-based information about gardening and environmental stewardship to individuals and communities across the state. We engage the community through educational and outreach opportunities on a wide variety of subjects and through a broad spectrum of projects. There are approximately 170 certified EMGVs, that's the abbreviation for Extension Master Gardener volunteers in Wake County. We have new classes that started last month, January 2022. At the end of that training, our students will be mentored through their first qualifying year of volunteering. They'll be required to do a certain amount of phone duty with a certified master gardener assisting. After they meet certain requirements, they will become certified themselves. Last year, I attended the International Master Gardeners Conference. It was hosted virtually by our neighbors in Virginia. There was a presentation about the South Korean Master Gardener program. It was very impressive. So it is truly international. All 50 states and the District of Columbia, 8 Canadian provinces, and South Korea have master gardening programs. Last year's conference, Bree Arthur, who is from this area, was our keynote speaker, so that was kind of cool. The 2023 International Conference is being hosted in Overland Park, Kansas by their master gardeners, and I've seen some of the previews of the gardens we'll get to visit, and it's pretty inspiring. We're hoping we can do it in person, that we'll be past this pandemic. In addition to the international conferences every other year, there are state master gardening conferences. I've attended one in 2015 and it was held in Cary. Our keynote speaker was Paul James, the gardener guy from HGTV back in the beginning when there was a G in HGTV, which is not so much anymore. And we did ask him, are we going to get some gardening shows on HGTV? And he said it didn't seem like they were very interested. So that was unfortunate. Okay, so our program today is talking about garden journals. They are as varied as plants in a garden. It can be a simple hardbound spiral notebook, or you could use graph paper to do records. They can be a combination of paper types like lined paper, unlined paper, photo pages that you collect in a 3-ring binder, or it can be a scrapbook. I prefer paper journals over electronic, but there are benefits to both. I've used several formats over the years. I think when you're starting out, at least for me, the easiest format is a calendar. It's the simplest. While journaling daily is a goal that I have yet to achieve, I can commit to at least making notes monthly. I'm probably better than that now, but there are some months that are so busy that I don't do a lot of journaling. I keep a journal, like a diary of my garden, rather than an extensive, meticulous record of every activity. But that has changed over the years as my garden has matured. At first, or when I start a new garden, I do track everything. I found that a spiral notebook with 3-hole punch paper is a good, inexpensive way for me to start. As I build my written journal, sometimes I find it makes sense to organize topics differently than by sequential date. For example, by plant type. So I'll have a whole section about my peonies and I'll put this all in a certain section and label it so I can find it easily. If traditional paper formats don't appeal to you, there are a lot of digital tools out there that you can download on your smartphone. Some of them are free and some of them are subscriptions. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Selecting a style is really a matter of preference. Choose a format that you're comfortable with and you're committed to use on a regular basis, because that's probably the hardest thing when you start off, is to be consistent with it. By recording information over a long period of time, you will create an invaluable source of information about your yard and garden that will guide you in making any future decisions about plants, problems, or design. To me, there's just something romantic about a garden journal. This image shows a beautiful leather-bound journal with blue and black ink. And to me, this looks like something that would be interesting to read. Excuse me. There are notebooks that are generic, like this photo. This could be a diary or anything. It doesn't have to be a garden journal. And there are also special purpose journals. I have one that was a gift that comes from the New York Botanical Garden that I've got an image later on in the presentation. I think they are great gifts. I like sketching and using colored pencils in my journal, and I like to use both ink and pencil. This image is from 2 journals that I've used in the past. They were published by Southern Living, and they have information month by month with areas for notes. It might be a little hard to read, but you can see in my list of plants for March that I've written down Bradford pears, which honestly at the time I admit to liking. Of course, now we would know better than to plant them because they're considered invasive in our area. But it is kind of fun and humbling when I go back to my notes to see how I have evolved and all the mistakes that I've made. So it's fun to do. This kind of journal offers tips and techniques for activities that are typically performed in the garden every single month. There are beautiful color photos and reprints of articles that have appeared in the magazine. I don't believe Southern Living publishes these today, but there are a lot of other offerings. And I'm going to tell.
We can only see you. We're not seeing your slides. Those of us on Zoom.
Oh my gosh.
Just letting you know.
Thank you, because that's a total waste. Yeah, let me see. I thought I was sharing my screen.
There you go.
Man, that's terrible. I'm sorry. Let me go back a little bit because you didn't get to see. Okay, that's the first one. And here we are. You see my Bradford pears in pencil? That's what I was referring to. So now the Wake EMGVs are in the final edits for our garden journal for Central North Carolina. It's organized by month and by plant type. For example, under each month, we have sections about lawns, trees, shrubs, annuals, perennials, and also what to look out for, be on the lookout for, like common pests, and also things like when to fertilize, prune, plant, or divide common plants that you find in a typical garden around here. Here is an example of a blank journal that has online pages. If you're artistic, this could be perfect for you. I would need a ruler to make those straight lines, but if you're a vegetable gardener and you want to track details for crop rotation, this blank journal is just a great idea because you can create kind of a calendar where you've got when seeds were started on the left-hand side, and then over on the right-hand side, they've got a to-scale drawing of their raised garden beds with examples of how they set up their rows. So they can use this for crop rotation, and it's beautiful. It's really good. This is a product I saw when I was looking at available journals. This may be something that I purchase in the future because I do tend to leave things outside in the rain in the garden and forget about it. So with this, it says that the water will just sheet off the page and it won't ruin your drawing or your beautiful writing. So that I just share. You can buy this online. It's specifically for the forestry industry, but it would work really well for gardeners. Let's see, I need a drink here. Okay, so talk a little bit about some of the digital options that are available. The Google Doc Sheets and Drive, they're all from Google, and those are free. I've tried some of the digital tools and the ones that are available for your smartphone, and I think they're great. They're handy, especially with the camera on the phone, but they really haven't worked. It hasn't clicked with me. I think part of the problem is I don't like the idea of having to subscribe. So what I found is if it's free, they give you ads all the time. And if it's not free, then you've got a monthly subscription cost, which it's not really the expense. It's the thought that, you know, what if 5 years from now, I don't want to use this anymore? Can I export the data? Am I going to lose it? Or what if I forget about my subscription and I let it expire? What happens to my journal? So I'm not using anything that's kind of commercially available. I do have iNaturalist and LeafSnap, the free versions, and I use them more for plant ID than I use them for garden journaling, but they do have that kind of a feature. There are diary type apps like Daybook that you can set up and have it actually remind you every day if you wanted it to, hey, do you want to journal today? And it'll pop up on your phone with a little reminder. So there's some interesting things that you can employ to help you as you start to garden journal, or maybe you're already using them and you're saying, oh, great tool, and you already know way more than I do. I've used Gardenize a little bit too, but again, they want a monthly subscription. So let's talk about what type of gardener are you? You don't need to journal everything, do you? Or maybe you do. Maybe you grow a lot of vegetables and it's really important to you to keep track of all kinds of information for crop rotation, for seed saving. So when you're journaling, who is your audience? Is it just for you? Or perhaps you can imagine sharing your journal, maybe even publishing it. Can you imagine journaling with a group of other gardeners, maybe making it part of an existing lunch date and rotating the event in each other's garden and sharing your garden journal with them? I have left my garden journal out and had a friend pick it up and start reading it. It was kind of eye-opening when she started asking questions and commenting and saying, oh, I should keep track of weather events in my garden. I don't do that. So when you visit other gardens, do you make notes about their gardens? Have you thought about maybe having a journal that you keep around and you ask other gardeners to walk your garden and make notes for you? Because one thing I learned with some of my gardening friends is they will see things in my garden that I have just gotten so used to that I'm not seeing, I overlook. So that's kind of an interesting idea, kind of like a guest book journal of your garden. So getting into the nitty gritty, what do we want to write about in our journal? It's really up to all of us, but here are some ideas. Site characteristics. I think creating a drawing to scale using graph paper or perhaps a computer software program is really helpful when you're designing a garden space. You'll want to include locations of all the buildings, utilities, hardscapes, and plants, if you can. You want to make the drawing large and detailed enough to recognize plants later. Drawing in pencil also allows you to make adjustments if you lose plants or you transplant, move something. And you want to make notes of things like the wet and dry areas of your yard. You want to follow the sun through the season, noting areas of shade throughout the day. You know that over time, some sunny locations transition to partial sun or even full shade. So you want to update your map on a regular basis. Many areas of my garden that were in full sun have transitioned to part shade as the trees mature. And so I make notes of is the shade full, is it dappled, or places where I have times of the year when I actually do get full sun, but only perhaps in the afternoon when it's blazing. So I need to think about what plants can survive almost shade all day and then that hot afternoon sun. Understanding site characteristics is important to selecting plants that will thrive in a specific location. So I try to take time to observe patterns. I notice the direction of slopes, and I have swales in the backyard where water moves. I think about how wind affects the site, especially different times of year wherein deciduous shrubs and trees are bare and wind may be very different that time of the year. Yeah, every location has its own microclimate. Making the most of the location's strengths and avoiding known problems help lead to more successful gardening experiences. Recording details about different locations in the garden helps serve as a guide for plant replacements, future projects, or expansions of the garden. Soil tests. So I like to kind of make areas of my garden, track them differently. I've got my front yard, my left side yard, my backyard, and of course raised beds. And I treat all these soils slightly differently. The lawn is in the front yard, and so that fertilization is a little bit different. And of course, the vegetable beds are more intensively used, so I am fertilizing there the most. So I track my soil tests separately, and I just keep little sections where I label what's going on, what amendments I'm putting in, any kind of problems I'm having, where I purchased the compost from, and that's all in my journal by soil area. So front yard does get soil tested every 3 years. I'm pretty consistent about that. Backyard, maybe even more frequently, because I have been adding a lot of compost. And, you know, we've had some issues with commercially available compost. So I like to test and make sure that I don't have any problems before I start the season. And seasonality. Many events like when plants bloom or pollinators visit or leaves turn color, they happen in a cycle. We have the best intentions of recalling all the details, but for me, without writing it down, the dates and my own reflections, much of this information can be lost. By capturing the month, day, year, and time in each journal entry, I can create a body of information that allows me to reflect and learn about my gardens, my triumphs, and my mistakes. I track weather, collect environmental data like rainfall, temperature, humidity, day length, cloud cover, frost events, storm damage. My husband's kind of a weather geek, so we have some equipment, and I actually can download it to a PC, and you can pull up websites and get all kinds of information about the weather from perhaps people in your neighborhood who have similar equipment and put it online. All this data really helps to see the effect of the environment on your plants and helps you guide in plant and in pest management decisions. You may find that you have problems when temperatures go above a certain mark, and you know that's the time that certain pests emerge, and so you can start planning in advance. So seasonal plant characteristics. Having color and interest at every season provides a lot of enjoyment year-round. So having a simple list of the months and which plants are blooming helps show where you may have holes in your landscape. This is something you can consider using transparent sheets over your main map if you draw a to scale drawing, and then use clear sheets or what's that paper called? Tracing paper. You can keep a map of what's in bloom and have multiple pages of this tracing paper where you can see where the color or the bare areas are. This is also where photos really come in handy. This is where I believe like digital journaling is especially useful. I frequently review photos that I've saved to my Google Drive. That's just where I save things up in the cloud because it's free, it's really convenient, and I've gotten better with it about tagging and labeling my images so I can quickly search and find them. Also for your journal, list of activities. So it can be what you're doing, and it also can be plans. So kind of in advance, going to your May and saying, okay, these are the things I need to remember. Or in May saying, this is the thing that I want to divide in fall, and moving ahead on your journal calendar and making a note for yourself for October, this is what I want to do. So you can develop it like a calendar. I think that's the easiest way for me to think of it, on paper, or it could be digital with a seasonal or monthly chore list. Things like planting, fertilizing, pruning, deadheading, seed collecting, all of that. And you can kind of see where the busy months are in spring and fall, and then perhaps you think about those projects that you want to plan for, doing those in winter, so that you can kind of stretch your enjoyment of your garden year round. Also, you've heard about integrated pest management, IPM probably. One of the key components is having a plan before the problem occurs with IPM. So knowing when to scout for a particular pest on your plants and reminding yourself by writing in your journal in advance is a smart thing to do. I'm going to talk a little bit more about pests in an upcoming slide. Who hasn't been asked, where did you get those pruners or that hoary knife? For me, if I don't write it down, I might forget, or it could have been a gift and I want to remember that thoughtful person. So this is something that I'll kind of just jot a note in my journal about tools, maybe where I purchased it and how much it costs, or if there's something that I'm supposed to do, I should, oil this or sharpen it. I might make a note in a month, this is something that I'm going to do. You can also want to keep some of this information on your phone, so when you're shopping, you know what you have. Saving records online so they're accessible when you're out shopping is just something to consider. These are the kinds of things I might just take a photo of, all of the different fertilizers I have on my shelf, so I know I already have that. Here's kind of the fun thing is plants. Getting to know the plants in your garden and their individual requirements will help you identify where they thrive and allow you to follow the popular gardening mantra, the right plant in the right place. Plants arrive in your garden from a variety of locations. They can be volunteers that germinate unexpectedly, divisions from a generous neighbor, seeds shared by a friend, pots purchased from a local nursery. Some plants may have tags with a great deal of information and you want to keep those. You might want to take a photograph of them rather than actually keep the plant tags around, or you might want to put them in your journal. There are ways to save them in your journal, like you glue them in, staple them in, things like that. They all contain Latin and common names and plant family. The date it was planted is something that you'll want to jot down as well, and perhaps how much it costs. And if you could write down any known problems for this plant, if you're bringing azaleas in and you know that that's a plant that can have certain fertilizing requirements, to jot that down, make sure you've got the fertilizer on hand in advance of needing to apply it. Activities around the plants such as pruning, fertilizing, and pest management, and then the dates that you completed those chores can be added to your journal. Here's the basic list of plants that I created when I was beginning a new garden after I had moved. It's just Google Sheets, which is free. It's got the name, the quantity, the source, and the price, and the date that I acquired the plant. It's very basic, but I referred to this many times over the years. This one's actually a little bit dated, but you can see the gist of it is just keeping a list of all the plants. It's been very helpful. Images. Continually capturing various images of your garden from many angles and throughout the seasons. Images can be illustrations, not just photos, if you're artistic. The images not only help in identifying plants, but also give you a reference for observing how plants change throughout the season and the years. You want to take a before photo of the landscape as well as an in-process image. You want to capture both macro of plant details as well as large-scale landscape photos. Taking photos of plant labels and seed packets is another way to record data without manually entering into your journal. Creating press plant specimens is also a fun thing to do. It's an alternative to photographs or drawings, and it helps you become more familiar with your plants. Pressed dried plants allow you to study their leaf, stem, and flower structure and give you a reference point even when the plants are dormant. You've got a link here. This is to John Teal's garden, digital garden journal of sorts online. On his site, he has a video on how he created this website. It's a free service from Google, and I use Google a lot because there are so many cool tools, like you can download satellite images of your property, for example. And the smaller link is a link to my online site. I made it small because it's a work in process. So you're not going to see a ton, but I'm starting to build this. Something else you may journal is harvests. If you want to keep track of fruit, vegetable, nut harvests, herbs that you've grown, so you can plant for future crops. You may be collecting and storing seeds, so you want to know when you collected them, what dates, because seeds may not be viable for a long period of time. Some are, but some you start to lose viability. And also, I was thinking, what about recipes? If you're tracking your journal by vegetables, and maybe you have a section on different tomato types, you might want to record some kind of cool recipes. And I'm thinking that that's making your journal something that you might make copies of and pass along to family members or share with other gardeners. While good management practices minimize the presence of pests and pathogens in the garden, every gardener inevitably encounters them. So scouting and examining plants, including the bark, under the leaves, and all around the soil, help with early identification of problems. You want to record the plant, the descriptions, the symptoms and signs, the environment, the pests. You want to accurately identify the insect, the disease, or the animal that's causing the problem, what action you took, and then the results, what worked and what didn't. And that's part of integrated pest management, which is the current way that we handle pests. We don't use pesticides immediately. That's kind of a last resort. Also, projects. I like to keep pages on projects that I would like to do. In fact, more of my project pages are on ideas than actual completed projects. So when I travel and when I visit other gardens, I will bring a smaller journal with me. It's not my bigger journals, and I will just make notes, and I take lots of photos as well. And that's kind of part of my journal, which is in multiple formats. So getting towards the end here, just some tips and miscellaneous information. If you're beginning a journal, there's no right or wrong way. You could have pages where you just note observations, like you saw the caterpillar on the milkweed, and that's an exciting event if you're somebody who's planting milkweed for monarch pollinator gardens. So just leave room for jotting down questions or tips perhaps you learn from other gardeners. No matter how much we pamper our plants, there are always going to be problems and casualties. So record the plant names, the circumstances under which it died, and any recommendations for next time. Consider including some fun elements in your journal, like envelopes for collected specimens, gluing in old seed packets or product labels, and pasting in photos or illustrations from magazines or books. You can use clear page protectors to prevent the wear and tear on certain pages. You can add tabs to your journal to help you quickly locate the sections you're looking for. Making notes about what worked and what did not work will help you with future decisions. So no matter what format your garden journal takes, from a 3-ring binder to an app on your phone or your tablet, the simple process of observing and recording will provide you with invaluable information to guide you in creating a garden of your dreams. blank slide here. This is a image of the New York Botanical Garden Journal. This is a 5-year journal. I received it as a gift, and I'm really enjoying using it because one of the things that I'm doing with 5 years, the way that it's set up is that you can note what's bloom by month and then see over the years as things start to mature how much more bloom you're getting or where it's failing. So it's interesting to have. This is the first time I've used a journal that's set up for multiple years, but it's really well thought out. So I wanted to share that one. And this is a pocket journal. This is actually reminds me of the trip that we took to Scotland. It's pretty small. It fits into my purse or a larger pocket. And I just carry this with me wherever I go. And I think that there might be something that I want to remember about a garden I visit, or in this case, it's just a list of plants that I was preparing a new bed. So I wrote down all the plants that I purchased, the quantity of them, and I can look back and remember things about that. Okay, and here's our contact information for the Master Gardener of Wake County. I'm going to stop sharing here. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry about the hiccup. It's been
Okay.
a little stressful trying to see if this was going to happen today. So
we didn't know that you were I didn't know you were showing slides until you talked about the book, and I couldn't see it. And I thought, well, she thinks we're seeing that book.
Yeah, I definitely did. Sorry about that.
Thank you. This was nice.
Okay.
Karen, this was really helpful. I loved it. And I have to tell you about the Master Gardener site. If anyone hasn't looked at it, you really got it. It is so comprehensive. I mean, thousands of pages. I mean, about anything you want to know. So, and I know it took probably a very, very long time and a lot of people involved and constantly updating it and keeping it current.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
You're welcome. The updating is a challenge, but we have a brand new tool that I'll quickly share that, you know how you sometimes go to NCSU site and the pages are gone because they've updated the publication, they've got new information out there. Well, we have a new tool where you'll no longer have that experience. If you buy the Garden Journal, there are links, but these are dynamic links. So if we update it, you'd never know. It's completely transparent to you, so they'll always stay current.
Oh,
Very
cool.
Yeah,
Thank
so it's
you.
kind of a cool thing. Yeah.
So I wanted to share a personal journaling opportunity that I didn't know I had until this past week. I was taking a walk and a bird flew down near me. It was a red-shouldered hawk, and I took a picture of it. And we interacted, and I moved up the road a little bit, and the bird flew near me, and then the blue bird flew again up the road, and I went near it. So we talked over a period of time, and I thought, gosh, I think I must have talked to that bird for 5 minutes. And I told that to friends, and I thought, oh, they're going to think I'm just making this up. But because I had photographed it, I went back to the photos, and you have an accurate timestamp on the photo. So you can know exactly when something happened and the duration if you had a series. And the other thing is that you can also get GPS locations that sometimes might help in your documentation of where something is. You know, like if you've taken a photo in your yard, you can, and you're doing mapping, you can document.
Yeah, I haven't found a tool that would do that, but it would be amazing if you could just take your phone, take a picture, and it would help you upload it, and you could map your garden that way. There may be something out there, but I haven't found it. I think what I've seen that is similar to that is pretty expensive from more of a professional standpoint than the average backyard gardener. And it's more for like a landscape architect that's doing a very large installation, not like small little plants That's a
Right.
great garden. Yeah.
But I think the NC State Arboretum has used GPS to map their whole place. I think the Arboretum has a grid so that they know where each plant is on their property.
Yeah,
That's
they
amazing.
do.
Yeah. I've seen the map because I know you can look it up before you go
Yeah.
and you want to find a plant and you can see the map and you know what sections it's located in. But yeah, I'll have to find out how they did that.
Yeah.
That's really cool. All right. Well, despite the weird technical issues, I had fun.
Yeah. Yeah, so did we. Thank you for
All right.
bearing with us and carrying on forward to give us, at least some of us, this presentation.